I met Clive, and probably around about this time, 40 years ago, that Clive phoned me up and said, "Nick, I'm making a movie. Would you like a part in it? There is some makeup involved." Which my first part I played, I would have been about 6 or 7. That was at primary school, and I played the third king in the school nativity play. And then the next part I played was a very shortened version of Peter Rabbit, but I played Peter Rabbit. And I remember the watering can. Peter hides in a watering can from Mr. McGregor, and the watering can was a huge, well, it seemed huge at that stage, cardboard container about waist high, and I climbed into this thing, and I remember it clearly because it was the post box for the cards at Christmas. To send your card to Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And I remember the costume that I had was basically a strip of cardboard with 2 ears, and I got in this watering can, and the ears promptly fell off, so I came out without ears. Must be a bit like Bugs Bunny coming out of that, come to think of it. So yeah, I mean, from the very youngest age, and then age 11, went to secondary school, and my English teacher, Mary Salomon, said that she was part of the local dramatic society, Theatre 48, and they were looking for a boy to play all the boys in An Evening with Charles Dickens, and I would have been 11, 12 at the time. And I think that was my first official amateur production, though I remember they gave me a 10-shilling postal order because we were doing it at Christmas. And that was my first, and then I just did every amateur society production possible.
No, I just found it interesting you mentioned the Kings there at an early age, because it's just what when we spoke to Doug Bradley, and he said he remembers going up to visit, I think it was his grandfather was from Edinburgh, I think, if I'm remembering.
That sounds familiar, yes.
Yeah, and he just said he's got the early memories, and he was a minister, and I can't remember what denomination, but just remembers him walking up the altar and standing there in his robes. I'd like to do that, and Doug sort of did end up to, maybe not the way, and it's just like you started out also in a similar thing, and it led to the same path as well. So yeah, so you were in school. Did you go to a drama? Did you go to theatre or drama college after that?
Yeah, so I went to school late because I wasn't 20. I was 21 when I went to school because I'd had reconstructive surgery on my face, and so I kind of took 3 years out after leaving school at 18. So I didn't actually get to drama school until I was 21, and that's when I met Simon Bamford. For those who don't know, because we were in the same year at Mount View Theatre School in North London.
Okay, and was it a while before this, and then the one that everyone probably wants to know about, how long are we talking between that and Hellraiser?
It's about 3 years, because I basically, Simon went on to, Clive Barker had come to see a production of King Lear, and Simon was playing the part of the fool, and Clive just asked Simon if he'd like to join the dog company, which was Clive and Doug and a whole load of guys who come from Pete Atkins. All that gang had come from Liverpool to London with this Fringe theatre company, which kind of made no money. But Simon joined them, and then Simon, I think it must have been Simon who invited me to a party, and that was probably been about a year or so of him
Oh,
of
yeah.
leaving drama school, and that's where I met Clive. And then it was about 3 years after that, and probably around about this time, 40 years ago, I think probably in July, August was when I think it was probably in July that
Mhm.
Clive phoned me up and said, Nick, I'm making a movie. Would you like a part in it? There is some makeup involved.
Uh, I take it he undersold the some makeup part
Yeah.
a little
And
bit.
Simon, yeah. And Simon says
Uh,
that he used exactly the same line on him as well.
and what was your first impressions of Clive Barker? Like, what kind of a guy is he when if you were to meet
He
him? Just
he's charming, funny, terribly generous, incredibly generous, and really loving. I mean, Clive is a huge fan of nature programs, David Attenborough style programs, and so on. He's hugely interested in the environment and
Mhm.
animals and so on. Just very, very, very intelligent. Whenever I met up with Clive, it's like I had to bring my A game, because if I made a stupid comment, he'd call
Yeah,
me out on it. It's like, so you always had the most extraordinary conversations with
yeah.
Clive. I remember reading Weave World. It would have been he was writing Books of Blood, or he'd been Books of Blood were published fairly soon after I met him, and I remember him having a launch party at his home, and really interested in making a whole load of people. Probably when I met Doug for the first time, and yeah, and then did Weave World, and I remember reading Weave World and thinking, oh, I remember having a conversation with Clive about that topic or that subject, and it was that thing was like, oh yeah, this is obviously on when we were talking about this was obviously on his mind, because this is what he was working on. So yeah, it just makes you think, really makes you bring your A
So,
game.
so when he was, when you realized he wrote these books and all that, you never had any misgivings that, I think at the time, 80s horror was kind of a sort of guilty pleasure a lot of the time. It was these kind of trashy, but you
It
never
was
had that
stalk
feeling
and
with
slap.
Clive. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'd seen a couple of the Fringe companies' productions. Frankenstein in Love was one, which starred Oliver Smith, who played the moving men in Hellraiser. He was playing, and I remember him walking on stage with this uh, rubberized, uh, full length body, supposedly the skin of a man. Um, as part of the action. And there was Frankenstein in Love. I saw Secret Life of Cartoons, which had Doug Bradley. Clearly remember Doug and Oliver. Doug was playing the rabbit, and Oliver was playing yes, Doug was playing the rabbit, and Ollie was playing a duck. And it was brilliant. Really, 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 really fast paced things. And I read the Books of Blood when they came out, because I got and still got them on the shelves now. So so I knew what his mind was like. I knew and of course I was modeling for him at that stage as well. That was, I remember modeling for him wearing just a jacket, and kind of opening this suit jacket and realizing he's like, yeah, they can just taking photographs of me. And of course, it was Shadwell in who inside the jacket has got everything you desire. Because he Clive was then obviously I
Mhm.
was modeling for him, so he could paint
Yeah.
stuff. So I had a fair idea of the way Clive's mind worked, and just obviously loved the Books of Blood. Just thought they were extraordinary.
Yeah. I think, again, to quote what Doug said to us, like, if usually for most people when they describe Hellraiser, they think of this shock film that's just mindless gore, but he says you're only just seeing the half of it. Like it's like it is a slasher film, but then he just sprinkled in these strange elements on top of it and made it something completely otherworldly. Then,
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've heard it described in so many ways. Um, the line I came up with was no teenagers were harmed during the making of this movie
yeah,
because it was a complete antithesis to Stalk and Slash, where basically you die if you have sex. Barbie is described, Barbie Wilde, who plays female Cenobite in the second film, she's described it as it's amazing what a woman will do for a good fuck. I think she came up with that line, which is, it's because actually that, and then possibly Doug may have mentioned it, it's been mentioned before that basically in Clive's mind, Julia is the lead character. It's the lead baddie who he hoped would go on to do subsequent films, and it was Julia, and that the Cenobites were the kind of the secondary characters, and in many ways that's true. We're hardly on screen. I think it's 8 minutes in total out of a running time of 96 minutes. We're actually
yeah,
on screen, but
yeah,
the rest of the time is really the story of Julia and Frank and their and the love triangle, and Kirsty trying to work out what the hell's going on, and why can't you get hold of her father?
yeah. Yeah, because it's interesting that as well. But while there is sex in it, it's flipped around because usually it's the women who have sex who are murdered first, and in this it's men who have sex that are getting punished. It's like
Yes,
Clive he just switched a few things around here, and it just becomes there's so much that can be read into this film. There's so many interpretations of what's going. And I think that's
yes.
like any good. That's where the best films are. But because I've also sorry, just to go off on a wee there's a lot of women who are big Hellraiser fans. It's very genuinely invest. Like I was interviewing the psychologist Katie Evans, who talks about psychology of fear, and she's a huge Hellraiser fan. She says, "I meet so many women who will admit to adoring these films."
It's interesting because I think Julia is an incredibly powerful woman, but more than that, I think Julia doesn't start off as powerful. She starts off as disgruntled housewife who's bored with her husband, um, and suddenly discovers that the lover, who happens to be the husband's brother, and who happens to be dead, um, is up in the attic, and that she can bring him back to life because of the blood. Um, so yeah, I think there are many, but I think that's the joy. That again, that's part of the story, the arc of the film, is that you watch Julia start as a very kind of weak, retiring character in many ways because she's just so fed up. Who then gains a lot of agency and starts becoming very proactive. And so that's a great story arc for it. But at the same time, it's really interesting. Of course, you've got the wonderful Andy Robinson playing the two characters, and which is just genius. I mean,
Yeah,
it's down to things like I've watched this movie so many times. There are so many favorite moments, but there is the moment when he's playing Larry, the husband, when he first gets in, and they enter the house, and he goes to hang his coat on the newel post at the foot of the stairs, but he brushes it off first before he puts the coat up,
all right.
and you just think, in that moment, you know exactly who that guy is. You've heard the dialogue. You get the relationship with um, the wife, but you just know he's a weak character. And then he can plays the complete flip side with Frank. It is absolutely terrifying as well.
Right.
Brilliant, genius
Yeah,
work.
yeah. And to go into your experience, so how was the role of Chatterer described to you?
Clive described him as the family dog. because he pointed out that he's the only one who actually touches anybody. He's the
Yeah.
only one who, in the first film, and I think in most of the later, is the Chatterer character. It's kind of like he's the bodyguard, he's the hitman, he's the muscle in the family. And originally, the idea was that the chattering of the teeth was based on the idea of a chattering monkey, and that I would be leaping around set. Well, that kind of all fell apart by the time they put me in the costume and they put me in the makeup, because I couldn't really move and I couldn't really see, so I couldn't leap up and fulfill that vision. So it becomes a very different interpretation of the character. So this before that basically somebody said it was a very studied performance to me. I said, well, I could only do what I could do. Yeah, it was so physically restrictive. But as Doug has said, you may have mentioned when you spoke to him, when Clive was working with Clive on Pinhead, Clive's constantly saying, do less, do less, do less. I actually couldn't do anything much more than what I did. But that became the strength, because he doesn't need, you see him wrestle Kirsty and put his fingers in Kirsty's mouth. That's the physical contact. By the time you get to the end of the movie, when Frank, again played by Andy, is trying to lead, all Chatterer does is just go, who are you kidding? You're not leaving. You're not going to be able to run away. Just there's no physical strength there. Mostly because I didn't want to knock him flying. Again, you can see my head is slightly turned to the right, because I can only really see through the right to the left eye. So the reason I'm doing it like that is because that's all I could physically do. But when you watch the film, you don't know this. It's just, who are you kidding? You're not going past me. Why do you think you can try? So I find it extraordinary how these limitations become the power of the character.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, you mentioned something interesting there, that you had facial reconstruction surgery when you were. Did that inform you? Did you draw upon that when you essentially you had to have another face put on top of you? Did that affect your performance, or did it inform it in some way?
It did. I mean, if you want to know the full story, which I'm always very chary about telling outside of watching I Am Monsters, it not only did it inform the performance, but it informed the design of the character as well. Yes, I think because the whole of my mouth is incredibly uncomfortable. Funny enough, I was in my dentist today, and I was saying, if you had any problems, I said, yeah, the canine at the top right. And she said, well, I can't see anything wrong. And I said, yeah, no, I know what it is. It's because I'm fighting off a cold. And because through the reconstructive surgery, all the nerve endings in my mouth for the teeth are very closely linked to the sinuses.
Okay.
So I feel pressure. It's got, over the years, it's got a lot less. But I have incredibly sensitive teeth, and I have weird, after the constructive surgery, I could feel the mucus through my teeth. So it kind of, because they were so fucked up, everything was completely fucked up. So yeah, I think I was left in a couple of days. I was left in it for up to 8 hours at a time. So, and having stuff really closely on my face is genuinely uncomfortable and painful for me. But hey, it's as Clive said at the time, you shouldn't have joined if you couldn't take a joke. Whenever I complained about, it's like, you shouldn't have joined if you couldn't take a joke.
Sort of Craig in a weird way was almost after that surgery, you're almost destined for this part in a weird
Yes,
way.
yeah. I mean, as I say, without giving the game away entirely, I'm literally the only person. It's because of this that it kind of inspired Clive.
All
Uh,
right.
but
And
there's a lot more to this story.
all right. And just and I was also curious, like, so you get there, your makeup stuff. Did yourself, Doug, and the others, did you spend time together to like, how he's going to move as a group? Because I know like other famous I think it was on Superman 2, Terrence Stamp and the Kryptonians. They spent he drilled them into you move with me, and like, was there anything like that? Did you guys
We
practice?
didn't. We didn't have time. We didn't rehearse.
All
I
right.
mean,
Okay.
Clive rehearsed with the principal actors. Um, we're small. I mentioned we're not bit part players. In fact, Clive had to fight to make sure that there were actors under the makeup. I had no lines, so therefore you don't actually need an equity member in order to play the chatterer. In fact, in later films, makeup artists play the chatterer um, because you. But as Clive points out, I think the training that 3 years of drama
Yeah.
training, 3 years of expressing character through your body and the way you move, um, that's that is vital for it too. But we didn't have the chance. No, I mean, basically, my experience of filming is that you get called on set, and the classic story, and Simon had exactly the same experience. Is like they got us into makeup, got us into set, and had not realised we really couldn't hear what was being said to us. So if normally what happens is you push on set, and I had to be led by the hand because I couldn't really see, and it was dark. They put me there, and I'm just standing there, not hearing what is being said to me at all, until they eventually, they. And I remember afterwards somebody saying to one of the makers, "Is Nick thick? I mean, can he just not take direction?" And he's like, "No, he just can't hear you." And so eventually they worked out they needed to get me on set to do a run through or walk through with the mask off, and then that gave me a chance to pace it out. They put down, to make sure once they understood what the problems were, they came up with solutions really quickly. And that's what filmmaking is about finding solutions. So I used to have a sandbag placed on the floor so that when I was walking forward, I would remember the number of paces that I had to check. And it's like remembering dance moves. Everything had to be so precise and so on. But they put sandbags, something a bit like this, basically on the floor, so that when I kicked it with my feet, I knew to stop moving. Um, but yeah, so I mean, it becomes filming is a very technical process anyway, because you've got to hit your mark, you've got to stand because they're going to light you, and you've got to hold your head in a particular way, and so on. Well, this is all a little bit harder when you can't really hear, can't really speak, can't really see. So it really did just become a question, a like learning dance moves, which again, I've done dance for 3 years at drama school. So and in fact, I've been doing contemporary dance before I went to drama school. Unfortunately discovered that I was really bad at pirouettes. I just cannot spin on the spot. Eventually discovered it's because there's a problem with my inner ear, and I had a slightly dodgy sense of balance. And just, yeah, me spinning is it's just not going to happen at all. Just constantly feel nauseous whenever I do.
Right. Okay. There was a rumor I saw posted on a YouTube comment about the film, and hopefully you can. I didn't get a chance to ask Brad this, but they said that near the house where you were filming, there was a pond with ducks. Is that true? And
it
apparently
is
one
true.
day you guys were waiting to be filmed, and the four of you, the Cenobites, just went to start. And somebody claims they've got a picture of the Cenobites feeding the ducks at the pond. Did this happen?
Well, that's really interesting. Okay, it wasn't near the house; it was at the studio.
Okay.
So we were filming in a place called the Production Village, which is long gone now, which was a film studio built in the 1930s and really quite small. Most of the time it was being used as a disco, but it had only recently been converted back to being a studio. And I think there is somewhere I've seen, can't remember the name of the TV show, but they were showing it as if, as if it was a new Pinewood, that they were trying to, it was a new British film studio, and this is what it was going to be. I don't know how many other productions actually went into the production village. Anyway, there was a duck pond. I don't remember feeding the ducks. It's entirely possible we might have. I do remember being out with the Cenobites, with the rest of the gang, talking with Doug. But then my memory is we were discussing the Cenobite rap, and that how the four of us really we should be made into a band with Butterball on drums, me on keyboards because of T, Doug as lead singer, and female Cenobite on bass, and Doug talking about the line, "We want the man who did this," and breaking it up, "We want the man, we want the man, we want the man who did this," and then it would be the Cenobite rap. I remember that happening. I also remember the fact that apparently the ducks used to cause retakes because they would be quacking, and then one day they just disappear. And and the rumor was, there's a guy called Waldo Waldo Rogue was one of the production assistants, and apparently Waldo was responsible for getting rid of the ducks. And I don't know, Waldo, I have no idea whether or not this story was you or how the ducks disappeared, but apparently they disappeared.
and with that, I'm curious as well. Like, see, when you were on, did you go to the canteen together as the Cenobite? Like, were you just together most the times you're on set? Did you just stick
Yeah, I mean,
together?
to be honest, well, except I mean, I think the thing is with Grace, and there wasn't really a canteen. It was that small a studio. I think there were craft tables. There was food to eat, but Doug and Grace wouldn't have been allowed to eat because it would have damaged the makeup. And also, how the hell does he get anything past those pins? But you'd have to talk about Doug how he did that. I could eat because the mask was one piece. So it took them about half an hour to get me into the mask properly, the teeth and so on. So I must have been able to eat, except when they left me in the mask and costume for about 8 hours, and just that's it.
Yeah.
You're young rumbling tumblies. That's not a problem, as long as it doesn't not so loud it ruins a take. Nobody really cares if you're hungry. So. Yeah, we didn't. You have reminded me though that what we did do was they would put us into makeup at the studio and then bus us, get us onto a coach to take us up to the house where we were when we were filming inside the house. And I remember one time Doug getting off the bus and using that a mother and her young school child walked past, and the kid just happened to look back after, because obviously we just got off and walked straight across the road into the house.
And I've got to what did Doug stay in character? Or did he break character in the kids' song?
Well, I think there was just I just remember Doug saying that it was one of those momentary things of the kid just happened to look over his shoulder behind him. because they'd actually walked past. So the mother wouldn't have seen it. I think the speculation was, what on earth was this kid saying to his mother?
That
And
kid
does this,
probably went home at night. I saw a monster. She said, "Don't be silly. You didn't see any
yeah,
monster."
yeah. I do wonder if, like, if there is somebody in the world telling the anecdote as how they were a kid, they saw Pinhead getting off a bus in Cricklewood. I'm sorry,
And then their
Dollis
mum
Hill,
refused
the
to
house.
believe them.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I'm curious about that. Like, so the chat, how did that work? The teeth, like, was
Oh,
that a extension to your own teeth that was going on in there?
no,
Or?
funnily enough, this comes on to, I'll quickly show this in. They didn't use an animatronic, it was me. Unlike the actor in the Hulu remake, who did have an animatronic on his face, and for whom it was apparently really, really uncomfortable. Do you think you've got a lot of metal and engineer, motors? You're wearing that on front of your face was very, and there's just so that the director adjust, could be in control of the speed of the chattering. No, it was me. I mean, so basically, what the way the makeup went together was basically they put on a bald cap. I had hair in those days. Put on a bald cap, and then they put the teeth in, which were basically dentures with the teeth
Yeah,
that you see
yeah.
outside the face, with DentiGrip on them. So those are put in. Then they put the mask on, and then because it is a one piece with a slit up the back, they put the mask on. Then they cut up condoms, and then they use super glue to attach the teeth to the mask, so that when I chatted the teeth, the lips moved with it,
All right.
with them, to make, so that it doesn't look as if it's a mask. Or when you see the chattering of the teeth, the lips move. And then they basically got KY jelly and squirted that in the mouth to represent saliva. So yeah, that was the experience. That's the magic of the cinema.
And the chattery, and like, it's going to say, but the chattery itself, was that left up to you, the rhythm of it, or was
Yeah.
Clive, was Clive quite involved with that?
No, I mean, to be honest, it was just Nick chatting your teeth, and what I did was what it was. I
Because I was
don't
wondering, like,
remember him.
yeah, because at the first time, like, it's like one, and then you just build it up slowly. And
Yeah, no,
was that
it's
just your
just
own rhythm you went with there? Was
it's
it?
just this is what I practice in the bathroom mirror at home, basically. And no, I can't do it now because my teeth. I grind my teeth anyway, and it would just be incredibly uncomfortable if I chatted my teeth. But yeah. That's basically the rhythm, and I did literally practice in the mirror at home. Just like, I have one thing to do in this movie, I suppose I better practice.
Yeah. So
Um,
I think
yeah,
overall, it sounded like it was really a pleasant shoot. Like, it
yeah.
seems
I
it
mean,
was a good camaraderie there.
yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly because not only with my fellow actors, but my fellow Cenobites, but obviously with the makeup guys, who became really good friends because we spent so much time with them. Normally, what you do, if you're just doing an ordinary part, um, you turn up, you learn your lines, you turn up on the day, unless it's a major part and you're going to be get rehearsed. You turn up and you deliver your performance, and that's it. You go home. Because of the makeup, I'd met the guys about 3 months before. So as I say, I mean, we were filming in October. So yeah, by now, 40 years ago this month, that's when I must have been going across to Image Animation for live cast and to meet the guys, and spent best part of a morning with them to begin with, and then came back for fittings and just to see them and to get casts of the teeth done and so on, and just to do, and then really got spent a lot of time in the company, and then of course when we're off set, spending a lot of time, didn't really spend any time with the other actors, it was the Cenobites together. We kind of had a green room to ourselves.
All right. A question came in there. For all its darkness, I imagine there's been moments when the illusion completely collapsed. Do you have a favorite filming blooper that still makes you laugh?
That's a really good question. Of course, the experience of being on the set for me is I really couldn't hear or speak or see what was going on around me. So there weren't so many bloopers. I mean, tugs, all sorts of things went wrong. It's not exactly a blooper. One of my favorite moments that still makes me laugh. So I mentioned that they use denture grip to keep the teeth in. And the effect of denture grip is it makes you salivate. And so the sound you mostly heard from Chatterer on set was as I was trying to deal with the saliva that was coming into my mouth. And so Ashley told me, she said she thought I was doing that just to freak people out. And I'm thinking, no, just wanted to be able to breathe. But I remember Clive suddenly rushing across into the dressing room with his hand like this because I'd say, Bob, you bastard. And I think it was because Bob Keane, this is Bob Keane, who with Jeff Portas ran Image Animation. Bob had managed to squirt denture grip into Clive's mouth.
All right.
So I do remember that moment very, and it does still make me laugh whenever I think of that moment.
It does sound like the whole set, it is all believed in Clive's vision for this film. From what you say, there wasn't many doubters about what Clive was trying to do, was there?
No, I think this is, I've talked to Clive about this in the past, and he said, he was incredibly lucky, that he met Chris Figg, the producer, and then Chris said, okay, we can raise about £1 million based on your name and the success of the Books of Blood and Weave World and all, because of your literary success, and the fact that they have made kind of films based on your stuff before, like Rawhead Rex and Underworld. You're definitely bank. Said how much they were able to raise, and through Chris's connections, they managed to get Robin Vigeon on board. Now, Robin had already done. Robin, with tremendous respect, working within the industry, a wonderful reputation, had worked on The Lion in Winter. Do you know the film?
It's ringing a bell.
It's Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn and Christopher Timothy. Not Alan Armstrong is another actor. It is some of the best. It's basically a medieval king and queen based on real king and queen. Just some cracking lines in it and just wonderful performances and looks absolutely amazing. So Robin came on board and Clive has said, Clive knew nothing. I mean, Clive has told the story, which I'm sure some of you watchers may have heard before, that basically in those days, you went to the library to get a book. Because Clive was struggling, he hadn't been paid all the money at this stage, and he went to the library to get out a book on filmmaking, only to discover that it had already been borrowed by somebody else. And there weren't that many books around in those days on how to make a film, and being a film director. And so he walked onto set, and he was just basically waiting for saying, well, what do we do now? And everyone just supported him, and Robin Vigeon taught him all about lenses, and just treated him with utmost respect, and everybody else did. I think we worked long hours. It must have been a nightmare for Chris because we were constantly going into overtime because Clive just kept on saying, "No, we've got to get this right, and we need to do this. We need to go again." and he had such wonderful visions. So I do remember earning quite a bit of overtime on the film because we were working late to like 8 in the evening when we should have been finishing at 6. So there was that. So yeah, but it was tremendous respect all the way around.
And there wasn't any nerves from the studio about given, well, the imagery that was going to. Were you aware that the studio was like, oh, this is a bit?
No, I mean obviously I really wouldn't have known if there were, but what the stories I've always been told is that basically, so it was, God, I can't remember the name of the production company. I really should, because it used to be. It was a studio owned by Roger Corman, New World Pictures.
Yeah.
They and Roger Corman was no longer involved with them. Roger Corman was a huge hit hero of mine. They saw the footage because it was American money. It wasn't British money. It was American money because British money wanted to go into Jane Austen and, all that. They didn't really want to make it. It was American money that made it a British film. They were so impressed with the footage that they actually pumped in more money so that they could put in more of the effects. So that whole sequence of Frank being born through the floorboards and the animatronic and the brain reformatting and so on, that was all done on an extra day's filming, which for the extra money. So they were able to add in more stuff. So I think they were. I mean, the only things that they wanted changing was changing people's accents so they were set in America rather than set in Britain. Much to the chagrin of some of the actors who weren't told that this is what was happening to their performances. So Sean, who plays Frank, not Skinless Frank, but Frank was not told this. So yeah, I think that was the only major change that the studio made.
And did you have any inkling making this that it would be so iconic? And was there any feeling you had that this was something very special, or was it just this is good, but you didn't realize it was going to be? Like,
did I think I'd be talking about this 40 years later?
Yeah, sitting down talking to someone in the Hebrides 40 years
later. I think what was very clear was we all knew how talented Clive was. I mean, the books of blood had been published. Stephen King had sorry, I was mashing together Spielberg and King, which becomes Sping, apparently. Stephen King had said, I have seen the future of horror. His name is Clive Barker. So, there was all that buzz around Clive. So we knew it was very different. Everyone knew it was very different. And everyone was very professional. Everyone took it very seriously, everyone. And I think, Ashley talks about how well she got on with Clive, and they're still great friends now. And we all are, because we keep on meeting up every so often when we do appearances. So no, I think that was all we knew. And I mean, the excitement to me was it was my first film role, and I'd not done any TV, and I'd not really done any repertory theatre. I'd gone straight into making movies, and that's really unusual for an actor. Particularly in those days. Basically, the idea was that you left drama school, would like you go into a repertory theatre, you'd serve your time in repertory theatre. If you were lucky, you would get into TV, and then if you were really, really lucky, you would get into film. Well, within 4 years of leaving drama school, I was in a feature film. That was, and working with wonderful people and so on. So that was the excitement as far as I was concerned. But it was, as I say, very different from anything else that was being done at the time, because most horror films were stalk and slash. And don't get me wrong, I love Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it
Yeah.
terrified me.
Yeah,
Deepest
I
reason.
mean, I like a bit of trashy stock, but there's something just extra. Some you can see there's some thoughts and some craft put into this, into Hellraiser, that elevates it, that makes it something more than just, because people talk about the gore and the blood, but it doesn't work without these characters, and even the
No,
Cenobites don't work without how you perform them. Kind of.
yeah, and without the amazing work of the makeup artist, the amazing work of the sound, John Midgley on sound, Robin Vigeon and his team on the camera work and the lighting, and the score, the score by Christopher Young.
Yeah, it's
Um, I mean, I think this is the only thing that you have to acknowledge, and we do. And I think I mentioned in I Am Monsters, if you say to people, getting into the makeup wasn't long on Hellraiser. On Nightbreed, it was 5 hours. And people said, oh my God, 5 hours to get into makeup. All I had to do was to sit in the chair and stay awake and keep upright and not move and move as little as possible. The two guys working on Kinski and Nightbreed, who are incidentally, one's gone on to win 3 Oscars for his makeup, Mark Coulier, and Neil Gorton is responsible for the makeup on Doctor Who. Christopher Eccleston, Russell T Davies, Doctor Who. Neil's company was responsible for that. So we are incredibly lucky to have, as actors, to work with these amazingly talented people to create this. But as you say, and I think that all feeds into, obviously, it's nothing without Clive's imagination to begin with. The film critic is it's the film director who goes up to receive the Oscar plus the producer. Because the producers do an awful, all power to Christopher Figg for assembling these people, keeping it on budget, bringing it in, making sure it happens. That's, yeah.
yeah, it's like, I mean, I enjoy the series, and I mean, even like compared it to the first one I saw was number 3, but then
Oh, right.
it's like when you compare like how the Cenobites are, it's like in the third one, it's like, what's a cool idea for a Cenobite, rather than your Cenobites seem to, you know, they're part of the story. Like there's a reason that Chatterer's the first to appear, and you're like that whole build up in that scene. It's constructed, whereas remember in 3, there's one who shoots out CDs from his head, and you can tell
Yes.
someone just oh, that'd be cool, a Cenobite who's part CD, isn't that? Whereas you can tell
Yeah.
Clive probably had thought behind each of your Cenobite characters and what they were doing.
That's the interesting thing. Is I think, again, it comes back to what I was saying before, that, for Simon and I, is that we will have thought about who this character was and what their backstory is. You don't need to, you never learn that. And obviously in the second one, suddenly I'm a boy or someone who looks like a boy, which then raises a whole slew of interesting questions about how come a boy opened a box and grew up in hell. I've written short stories about this, and I think that's the other extraordinary thing about Hellraiser, is that it spawned a whole load of comics, short fiction, long fiction. How many films are we up to now? And Dead Reset now. God, that incredibly violent game, which is coming out, folks. I believe October 13th.
Yeah,
It's coming out in the next couple of months, I believe. And no, I was nothing to do with me, um, uh, apart from creating the original. It's lovely to see the fact that it was. You got the original Cenobites in that game, so that that is quite extraordinary.
yeah. And like you said there, you came up. Did yourself and Clive work on a backstory for Chatterer, or was or did you just have to fill that blank in yourself to help the
No,
performance?
no, it was literally just. And I'd say one of the reasons that I call Clive generous is because he's very happy for people to play in the sandbox. Um, so this is stuff I was kind of doing for my own uh, benefit and interest afterwards to just kind of solve that problem in my head. Well, why would it be that was? And then I had the chance when they were doing the Hellraiser anthology comics and short stories. This is the second volume that my short story Prayers of Desire is in, which is my explanation as to how a boy ended up in hell. I think that's one of the fun things. I wrote Hellraiser comics for a time because Clive, had reached deals with Marvel and
Yeah.
Epic Comics. So all
Wow.
sorts of people who've written Hellraiser comics um, that are out there, and we did those in the 1990s, and then Boom Comics did Hellraiser comics. There are, as I say, you've got the game now. I was, I think they talk about a TV series all the time. Be really interesting to see what they could do with the TV series. I think
Yeah,
you
it'd be
could.
interesting. What way can they? Could you do a whole TV series just set in Labyrinth with just Cenobites?
I
Would that
think
work?
probably not, but what you
Yeah.
could do is use that as a leaping off point to start telling the stories of an anthology series, because the real challenge of writing anything to do with Hellraiser is pervert finds a box, opens the box, or innocent finds the box, opens the box, the Cenobites turn up. Um, it's got to be so much more than that. That's a kind of a framework in which you start asking questions and so on. So I think with some imagination, there are some talented writers out there and some filmmakers that I really would like to see there would be. I know there are various projects have been talked about in the past. I have no idea where any of these things are up to, but I think there is still a rich seam because it is
Yeah.
so unusual.
Yeah.
There is nothing quite like Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
you could do an anthology series. I think
Yeah.
very easily.
Because I was thinking that like through horror, there's nothing even close to what the Cenobites are in any other franchise. They're so unique.
Yeah, the other monsters that we think about are your Freddy's, your Jasons, i.e., you have a killer stalking teenagers and killing them. I'm trying to think if there is anything. No, I can't. I mean, certainly not in terms of a franchise. I mean, there are all sorts of franchises and so on, but nothing. And I think one of the reasons is because it is so transgressive. It's weird. I think you've got, in many ways, I don't know how easy it would be to make a film like this these days,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
there are so many problematic things
It's
because it is so transgressive. I mean, I remember
well,
at the time becoming aware of a whole society of people based around fetish wear that had no knowledge of except through Clive and Skin 2 magazine, and just no understanding of any of this world, who I started meeting through, and people who pierce themselves and body mutilation and so on. Obviously, there are, extraordinary, wonderful, wonderful people. And I do find it absolutely amazing that, Hellraiser really touches something very deep in the human
Yeah,
psyche.
yeah, and for it to have such a deep, diverse fandom as well. It's a fandom unlike any other. Like I said, like so many, like women, LGBTQ are all drawn to this.
Mm.
It's very interesting, that, isn't it?
The horror community, generally speaking, is very wide, and I love the horror community. But I guess you're right, and I think I'm always impressed by people, the cosplay. Um, and it's not that like it's not like there aren't um, other hugely uh, successful franchises out there like Art the Clown and so on. Yeah, all hats off to them, guys. Well done. Um, but you're absolutely right in terms of this group of monsters or creatures. I cannot think of anything else
Yeah,
like it.
because it's even like, I think about it. Like, I mean, I do enjoy horror films, and I watch modern horror films. Your paranormal. I know Katie was on; she's
Mm,
a big Paranormal Activity fan, but I've watched that. I've watched Insidious, and it's like, you know, you know what's happening all the time. It's like there's a long stretch of silence. There's a loud noise. You jump a little bit, and then you back down. But I said it's nothing as lasting as like in that first Hellraiser. When that TV starts flickering in the hospital, and when you appear and just the teeth, it sticks with you.
it's
It's
I am so lucky,
permanent.
honestly.
Yeah,
It's a better build up for an entrance than Darth Vader gets in Star
yeah.
Wars.
It's like
It
such
is
a
more of a build up
yeah.
to the actual, it goes on before 3-4 minutes before you actually get to see me on screen. And it is all building up to that one moment where Chatterer appears walking through. And again, the classic thing of build tension. Oh, she's safe. She's back in the hotel room.
Yeah.
No, something's going wrong. Something's going wrong. What the fuck is
Yes,
that? What the hell is that? Just
because
walk
it
through
was
the
very
wall.
interesting when we were going to watch. No, sorry, when we were about to interview Doug, one of my co-hosts who's not here tonight. He said, like, to prepare for it, he rewatched the films, and he was going to rewatch two, and his wife was there. She's not a big horror fan, and she just saw the start where Andy Robinson's just basically when he gets flailed, the start
Mm.
of two, and says Jesus wept, and she goes, "Turn that off now. What the fuck is this?" And I was just touching on two. Obviously, in two, we get to see Labyrinth, the home.
Mm.
Or did that match up to what? I mean, I'm guessing yourselves and the others probably maybe talked about it on the first one, where they come from, the Cenobites. What's it like? Did that match up, or did Clive just go off in another weird direction there when you finally saw the home world?
That's interesting. I don't think we ever did discuss it. It's kind of it's kind of because all you see in the first film is this long corridor, and basically it's an extension of that. Now I don't know how much. Of course, by the time Hellbound is being written, Clive is not writing Hellbound. Pete Atkins is writing it. And obviously they talked, and Tony Randall, the director, were working closely with Clive on this. And it was like, yeah, it's kind of a logical extension. And then you get these great shots of the moments of what, the clown juggling with his own eyeballs. That this kind of weird, suddenly you're in a kind of a weird fantasy fairground thing, as much as and then the idea they've all got their own little cells. There was something we did do in the first film, which you literally only just see a flash of, is the fact that they had a set which was basically two flats done as a corner, and then they put us in this. and filmed this. And with me, it was chattering the teeth. It was just, this is the creatures who are in hell. And that's all the information you get on that. So I'm guessing that they must have described, thought about it and so on. But yeah, I think apart from it was a realm of pain and pleasure. Demons to some, angels to others. They're kind of the clues in Clive's script in as to what this place might be. But that whole vision of Leviathan as actually the box, and the
Yeah.
boxes are obviously an extension of, and the fact that Leviathan is not Satan. Leviathan is something
Yeah.
completely and utterly different, and that is almost a mechanical thing, almost like an engine. And the sound as it spins round, and the black light falls upon you, and it makes you kind of look as if you've been exterminated by a Dalek.
And also, I think
Or,
it's the fact when you see the landscape, it's very precise, very sterile looking. Again, it's not what probably you thought. For a lot of
no,
people
but
you're watching,
again,
they're probably thinking it's, your typical kind of hellscape and all that. And then it's this bizarre, sterile land. Again, it's just outside your comprehension what this could be like on this world.
well, and again, I can't remember when these conversations. Right, I'm just checking. My hearing's gone slightly weird, and I'm just wondering if how
Sorry.
much. No, it's okay. I thought my headset had run out of battery for a moment. What I was going to say was the fact that the idea, which I remember discussing with Clive when I was talking about writing Hellraiser comics and was kicking around ideas. And I cannot remember when the conversation took place, but he's saying, in the Christian mythology, hell is chaos, humanity is order. And Clive just basically turns that whole idea on its
Yeah,
head.
yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah, humanity is chaos, hell is order. And if you think about fascism, if you think about
Yeah.
priests, you think about organized religion and the infliction of suffering. Sorry, Catholic Church, you have a lot to answer for over many years. Um, the and other religions as well.
Yeah, well, yeah.
They are prescriptive. Really, the idea, so these ideas of how that they are order, whereas humanity is naturally chaos. And that's what makes it humanity, is that we are chaotic, unreasonable beings who have driven by desire, basically. And that Leviathan, and this is what I like about this idea, that Leviathan is kind of a machine, this engine, rather than a living being, rather than a living being with veins and muscles and so on, is something mechanical.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. It is.
And that's what I mean. Whenever you start going into the world of Clive Barker, you end up going, oh, wow, yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
I've not thought about that before. Yeah,
and that's basically what he wants us in it. He wants you to talk about it and explore it.
yes, yes.
And I'm just I think, well, the final question here would be like, and how do you feel looking back? Is it something, I think you're quite obviously very proud of this and very proud and happy with that it's reaching, you're sitting talking to someone at the opposite end of the country who wants to speak to you about it. I mean, it must bring you a lot of immense pride that it's had this effect, kind of.
I am such a lucky son of a gun. I am so grateful that people still want to talk to me, because, as you heard, I like talking. Yeah, I think I remember talking to other actor friends of mine and just saying, Nick, just have to understand just how lucky I am that a piece of work that we created 40 years ago has had such an effect on people. I remember recently there was a documentary about the making of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and Terence Stamp talking about how much fear he had about when he was approaching the part and so on, and was amazed that so many years later people still wanted to talk about this, and how touched he was that it had obviously touched so many people's lives in a very different way to Hellraiser, obviously. But I think it's really rare that, I mean, obviously there are world famous actors who have huge filmographies, which, where they have many, many, many films that touch people deeply in all sorts of ways. But yeah, generally speaking, for an actor, I'm incredibly grateful.
You can't beat having had this in your life, really, can you?
Yeah, and it's not just the acting that's come out of it. It's led on to meeting people and got me got me through the door to meet with film directors, but also being invited to take do small roles in films because of Hellraiser and the effect that it's had on other filmmakers, but also just inspiring for writing and so on. I mean, Clive has always been really encouraging of my writing, but also to have a sandbox to play in as a writer where there are already people who are interested in
that's the thing
reading your story.
Come across is that camaraderie you guys all seem to still have. You all still seem to be good, because I hear a lot of these iconic films, they all sort of, that was great, but they've gone off their set. But you guys all seem to touch base regularly and check in with one another.
Yeah,
that's incredible. Like, just I know that from my own life. The jobs I work, there's very few where I worked one job and we keep coming. So like, it's just very rare to have that in any walk of life, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I suppose one final question, which none of the anyone else would you ever consider coming up to the Hebrides for a visit? That's a cardball now. There you go.
That was interesting. I would, because my husband comes from Stirling, so it's not that much further. It's a part of the world I would like to visit. Clive, I remember coming back from, don't know if it was Shetland or that, but that somewhere in the Hebrides, precisely where I'm not sure, because he had an aunt who lived up there, and him just coming back with basically a bag of bones. He had, including a cow's head complete with horns, or a sheep's head, or maybe a sheep's. Perhaps it was a sheep's head. In my mind, it's a cow's head, but I think it may have been a sheep's head, a sheep's skull. Sorry, when I say head, I mean skull.
Oh, right.
And God knows how he got it back, but it was just this pile of bones that he picked off the beach, and brought back with him to use in his art, basically.
So
it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Just don't ask me when.
All right. It's just, we do have a nice, friendly little convention here if that would interest you. So we can't promise you riches, but it's a fun community kind of focus convention.
Wow.
So we can maybe talk off screen.
I'm afraid the classic line is talk to my manager.
And just lastly, if people want to reach out for you, if they've got their own questions, where could they find you?
So I'm so bad at social media.
Right.
I am there. Through either Instagram, which is Nicholas_Vince. Facebook, there is a Nicholas Vince page. It will tell you, if you go to the Nicholas Vince Facebook page, it will tell, and you message me, it will tell you I'll get back to you within about a day or two. That's rubbish. so bad. I suddenly realized somebody messaged me back in January and I'd not actually responded. So you're more than welcome to ask questions and reach out. But and if it's work or anything like that, then just go to the website. There's a contacts thing. Professional stuff through the website. But yeah. You can also find me on Cameo if you want a really quick, brief greeting for somebody's birthday,
Yeah.
or christening, or inspiration, or just weird stuff. Basically, I'm good at weird.
Be a good. Finally, what's the weirdest thing someone's asked you to do in character as Chatterall? Weirdest request you've had? That we can broadcast.
Yeah, no. Okay, yeah. I had signed the parts of people's bodies, and I know they've had my name signature tattooed because it was signed near a tattoo of the character. The weirdest thing I've ever been asked to sign is a gentleman's.
Just to say, may or perform as Chatterall. Have you ever had that?
Yeah. Well, basically the weirdest thing I've ever been asked to sign is somebody's dead dad's dentures. That was a couple of years back in Sheffield, and it is online somewhere. It is. I always describe it as his dead dad's dentures because it alliterates so beautifully. But they did put it on, and basically it starts with him approaching. This was because it was at Sheffield that this happened, and I would quote the fact that somebody was filming somebody approaching the table, and I'm going, "That's weird." And then he just said, "Would you mind signing this for me?" It was just the upper set he got me to sign. Apparently, his father had been passed, I think, a couple of years by that stage, and he just said he'd asked his mum if it was okay, and she'd said, "Yeah, Dad would have loved it."
All right.
Yeah, so I think that is definitely the weirdest thing I've ever had to sign so far.
Right.
Probably so far.
It could be topped, I think.
Yeah.
Also, thank you so much, Nick, for coming on and coming on. Yeah, we made it all the way through. So, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for watching. Please keep liking and subscribing. We're doing really well. As you can see down in the corner, we won an award this year, one of the top geek podcasts in 2026, and we also been making the UK charts regularly. So things are happening for our wee podcast, and we've got amazing people like Nick here coming on, and it's been such a pleasure. And well, I think we've only touched the tip of the iceberg, I think, because we've still got Nightbreed to talk about and all that. So
that's true.
So yeah, so it could be a sequel to this coming in the near future. We'll see. Hopefully,
I look forward to it.
Hopefully, no disaster happens to that one. But
thank you. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll speak to you all soon. Good night.
Good night. Take care, everyone.